Yeah, no, I was flattered that you wanted to wait to see it. I hope it was enjoyable.
It was, I mean, enjoyable is one way of putting it. I found it really unsettling. But I'm going to begin. I mean, like obviously it's playing a Tribeca. I mean, it's one of those things. It must be, you make a movie, time passes, and then here it is. Is it quite nerve wracking when it kind of hits this point, that week when it's finally going to be out there in the big bad world?
Absolutely, but not as nerve wracking as waiting to see where your baby is going to kind of land. I don't think we ever in our wildest dreams imagined that it would be at such a fantastic festival like Tribeca. It was unbelievable when we got that news, and I was just so proud and like happy for our actors and our crew who work so hard. And then you enjoy it and you're excited, and then yes, like you said, now I'm like, oh my God, in 2 days people are going to be able to see it. Oh my God, like I hope everyone likes it. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster.
Are you able to go? I'm not really sure what's happening with like restrictions and stuff at the moment. But are you able to go and see it with an audience in New York?
So what's amazing is that since we're part of Tribeca at Home, anyone in the US can watch it from their house. We will be going to Tribeca, which is exciting to just do a few things there at the festival and, get to enjoy it, which is amazing. I think it's the first festival that's doing like a hybrid, like half open, half not post-COVID. So that's also really cool.
As I mentioned at the start, there is a kind of uneasy tonality to this movie. It's quite unsettling. Is that something that you kind of felt on set, or is that a kind of a feeling and atmosphere that's kind of conjured in post-production?
That's a great question. As an actor, I absolutely felt it on set, just playing Mary. My heart rate was elevated, like I was constantly running. You feel kind of, or I felt kind of sick to my stomach the entire time and had this elevated heart rate. But then as a producer, you want the vibe on set to be fun in a weird way. Like you want everyone to be having a good time, and you want that feeling of uneasiness to kind of dissipate when you're in between takes or when the camera's off. So it's really a bit tricky because when the cameras are rolling, you want that feeling to kind of seep back into everything. And then as soon as Mickey or the director calls cut, you want it to kind of dissipate so everyone can get a break. So, we balanced that.
Yeah. I found that the film, because obviously when it sort of begins, because we see sort of films that, have to tackle these kind of themes, but the film constantly surprised me as it went along. Was that a bit of a sort of joy in subverting audience expectations? And because I guess you kind of want to play up to some of the tropes of the genre and the kinds of some of the familiar beats, but at the same time make something unique. I just wondered about that kind of balance. And if you have fun knowing that audience members are going to sit there expecting maybe one thing and leaving with a different impression.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. My sister actually texted me. She's like, I'm afraid to watch it. And I'm like, well, you should be afraid because it's not going to be anything that you're expecting. I think even as a fan of horror, the genre, when you sit down to watch a horror film, you can kind of feel secure knowing that, yes, you're going to be scared, but you're going to be scared, right? Like, what's coming. And with Agnes, you're never allowed to be secure in the genre that you're watching. You start in a horror and then we throw a lot of comedy at you and then a lot of sadness, and then we're just out. We almost go from doing a horror comedy to going into like a personal character-driven drama.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you shot in order, because or at least did you shoot the kind of in that order? Because obviously there is a bit of a break point, isn't there? Like you said, I just wondered, did you shoot them in one after the other, those two parts?
We when we cast Jake Horowitz, who plays Benjamin, we were working with his Juilliard schedule, so we actually had to shoot all of his scenes first. So the first scene we shot was the sandwich shop scene. So we started with the very last scene of the movie, and actually we're not in order at all. We bounced around so much, but for me, that really helped kind of add to the chaos of Mary. And as a production schedule, it's totally fine for the most part. That's how things go. I've shot movies in order, and to me, it's almost odder to do it that way. Like, it doesn't necessarily make things better, like you might think.
Yeah. It's an interesting headspace, isn't it, his character of Mary? How, because obviously the sort of becoming a nun, does that require a kind of whole different perspective on life, I guess? Because obviously, you know, to become, for people who do end up sort of eventually becoming nuns, they kind of have to have a certain what's the word? I don't know. They see the world in a kind of certain way, I suppose. How was it kind of getting into that mindset?
Yeah, it's absolutely different. And for me, you know, more than thinking about Mary's ultimate goal, becoming a nun, it was more from Mary's perspective, where can I go? What can I do to be left alone to contemplate my son all day long? So the lengths she goes to in order to do that is actually a little sinister. The idea of going through the process of becoming a novitiate, getting into this Carmelite order, like she's really doing a bad thing. She's being very selfish. So what drove me about her was her overwhelming desire and going to any length to be left alone. And also, as you watch the film, you notice that she's never left alone. No one will leave her alone, and that ends up driving her insane.
Yeah, I was wondering about the kind of research you did to get into this role, because I was sort of, I haven't got too much experience in this kind of world, but you know, my wife went to Catholic school, and they were just nuns sort of wandering around kind of everywhere, you know, which for me just seems a bit strange because I sort of mostly recognize nuns from horror movies. But yeah, I just wondered how you sort of what you kind of did before kind of taking on this part to really kind of get your head into this world.
Well, you know, I grew up, my father was Catholic and my mother was a Seventh-day Adventist. So I went to church on Saturdays and Sundays and had a tremendously confusing amount of religious study. So that's definitely always been what kind of drove me towards movies like this, is I'm just so curious about why people choose or need someone to tell them what to do and to tell them how to act in the world. And I think the thing that really grounded me to Mary as I was working on her was really her relationship to her son, and the idea of getting unexpectedly pregnant and then deciding to keep that child and feeling so much love for this person, you know, and then having that taken away. So I really, I read What to Expect When You're Expecting 10 times. And I would just like talk to my friends who had young children, be like, can I just like take your son for the day? And I would just, you know, try to create these like tactile memories with these kids and the joy of being around new life. And then, you know, personally, when I was 16, I lost a friend early, unexpectedly. And it made me really angry because like the religious community around me was just, you know, everything happens for a reason and God has a plan. And those things made me very angry because those aren't answers and I reject it. I don't believe that. And so that anger that Mary starts to exhibit at the world, telling her to let go and to bury the dead, very much came from my own personal feelings.
Yeah. But what do you think it is about the church that kind of breeds great horror? Why is it so? Because it is such a good stomping ground, isn't it, for kind of horror movies? I mean, I feel kind of reluctant to call Agnes a horror movie because it feels like it's a whole mishmash of genres. But I guess there are horror elements to it. And yeah, what do you think it is about the church and religion and nuns especially that have kind of featured in so many horror films over the years?
I think it's the depth of emotions that it brings up. You know, guilt is a huge thing that I think people draw from. Being suppressed, like even the idea, like for nuns, like you're suppressing yourself. You're taking sex out of your life. You're taking, you know, physical comforts out of your life, and those things. It's like the idea of trying to be pious. I don't know if any human is ever actually capable of achieving that, and I think that's. I think it goads filmmakers on to work in this space because there's just so much temptation. That's what I think.
Is there a kind of delicacy, do you think, when dealing with religion in film, a sort of certain sensitivity with how you deal with such themes? Because I guess when you have to consider how much this kind of means to some sections of the audience potentially, I guess you can kind of scrutinize but never ridicule is probably maybe a one way to do it. But I just wondered about how you, when dealing with subject matters that are set within a kind of religious community, if you do have to tread carefully at all, or does that detract from the kind of freedom of creativity?
You know, we didn't think that way at all. I'm sure that we will definitely end up offending some people with the first half of this movie. Yeah, I think when you're making art, if it doesn't come from you, if you start to think that, oh, I need to be careful, I need to like tread lightly here, it gets diluted and your message doesn't get across. You know, art is not meant to be pleasing to everyone. Art is art. You're getting your point of view, your perspective across. And for me, being attracted to this movie, it was the idea of challenging people's perception of God. And, you know, at the end, almost taunting this priest saying, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. You never forget.
Yeah. Well, I think films that challenge are essential viewing. So, but that sort of leads me on to my next thing, which obviously you've launched your own production company. Is that a kind of type of movie and a kind of a style of cinema that you quite like to continue along with, films that do challenge viewers in that way?
Absolutely, absolutely, and especially in the horror space. Like that's myself and my two partners. Like that's our favorite genre. We love all of the things you can do within horror. You know, you can. It's just so broad. You can do horror comedies. You can do psychological thrillers. You can do creature horror. There's just so many kind of different avenues you can go into, and so many other themes you can explore in horror because, you know, horror is really about people being put into spectacular circumstances that they aren't equipped to deal with. And yeah, I love watching those movies. I love producing those movies, and I love acting in those movies. You know, what's more fun than thinking, well, at least for me, I call it fun. It's probably not fun for a lot of people, but like confusion and anxiety, like those things are just, it's just, I just love it. I just love seeing like, how is someone going to deal with this situation? Or like with Agnes, how is someone not going to deal with this situation? You know, Mary doesn't really deal with anything very well. She's a runner.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you mentioned, I mean, a production company will kind of put a lot of kind of good horrors out there, and obviously with yourself at the kind of forefront of it, because traditionally speaking, those behind the lens horror movies wise have been men across the years. It's been a genre that has been, you know, sort of going back kind of 60s, 70s, 80s. But is that one of the great things about what you're doing here, is that you're kind of, it is a genre that needs more of a woman's touch. It needs more female-led stories and written by women. So was that something that played on your mind when you decided to kind of tackle this genre, especially, well, not especially, but look into films from that genre?
It absolutely, you know, I was lucky to have, you know, I was young when I became an actor, and then I came to Los Angeles and I started working or being aware of producers and female producers. You know, that was so new to me. And of course it made me feel like, oh, I can do this too. I can have a bird's eye view of like creating a world, not just a character inside a world. And then loving horror, I remember watching The Babadook and learning about that filmmaker. And I think that movie is so unique because it's told from a woman's perspective. And I absolutely wanted to do more like that. So yes, I think women in horror can be very scary. You know, like there's a lot of pent up aggression, I think, that women feel that we want to put on the screen, and I want to invite those women to tell their stories.
Yeah, I mean, the Babadook is such a good film as well, isn't it?
So good.
So good, yeah. Because I was wondering, you sort of mentioned about being obviously an exec producer on this. We're talking about it kind of playing at Tribeca and stuff. Yeah, is this a new feeling of like kind of feeling a bit more kind of it's not invested, but when it comes to like people seeing it and people liking it, I guess as an actress you always want people to like what you're doing. But having taken on more of a kind of an exec producer role, is that heightened now? Are you really kind of like, crap, people, I really want people to like this?
Yes, so much more, because I really care about all the people that made this. You know, again, it's widening the lens. You know, because when we're making our first movie, my partner Alon Gale and I, you know, we believed in this script, but we still, like, we had to sell this script to Sean Gunn and Chris Sullivan, you know, these actors that we've been friends with and love their work. And, you know, we had to call in some favors. You know, we had to say, trust us, come down to Oklahoma City. Like, I promise you'll have a good time. And they did. Like, they had a great time on set. But of course, getting into a festival like Tribeca, it's so validating, and it validates them and like their hard work. So that was like the most exciting thing for me, was going like, see, I promise, like it worked. Thank God it worked.
I'm just mentioning the people that kind of worked on this. How was it sort of working alongside Mickey? Because there's a real vision in this. You can tell from the. Sometimes you can see a director's kind of style, and I got a real sense for Mickey's work here. Yeah,
he's a very visual director, and he's surrounded himself with an incredible crew. His cinematographer, Samuel Calvin, is just he's fantastic. He almost moves the camera like a serpent. Like, there's something very fluid about the way he moves. And I remember when he was describing how he wanted to shoot the movie, stacking all the nuns so they looked like every frame should look like a Baroque painting or a Renaissance painting. And I just was really drawn to that. And I think he, you know, often when directors describe what they're wanting to achieve, they get close to it, but you know, it never like fully gets brought to light. And Mickey really did. He brought exactly what he wanted to visually to the film. So that was like a pleasure working with, especially as a producer, because it was my first time starring and producing and working so closely with Mickey every day. You know, we worked together for 6 months before we ever started shooting the movie. Yeah, so that was a real pleasure.
Do you reckon you'd direct? Have you given much thought to maybe directing yourself one day? Is that something you'd like to get into?
Yeah, it is. It's something I'd like to do. I'm constantly coming up with ideas, and then, you know, you ask yourself the question, but where does it go? Where is it gonna go? And so like, that's like, I'm finding myself stuck in that place. But I literally said to myself last night, I was like, you'll figure it out. It's coming. Just keep asking yourself, like, where is this story gonna go? And then, you know, direct it. And especially with Matthew and Alon, my partners, they're so capable and I trust them so much. So having them behind me when I do go towards directing, I think will be really great. I'm excited to do that.
So looking back a bit, I was just going to ask before sort of coming towards the end, but just you obviously spent a long time on Castle. You must look back so fondly on that experience in your life, because now you've got a bit of distance from it as a kind of such a brilliant kind of way to kind of really kickstart a career properly.
Yeah. I fondly is like the perfect word. I love that show. I still love that show. I still love Alexis. You know, she's kind of like my invisible friend. Like, she's always with me. And all that cast and crew, like, we're all still really close. You know, we get together for barbecues, or if someone's doing a play in Los Angeles, we all go and see the play. We really became a family, and that's a special thing. You know, like, I really rely on them, and it was really nice to start so young and be surrounded by people that I could rely on, and that did help me and gave me good advice, and, you know, hazed me and all that good stuff. So yeah, I loved it.
There's a Castle WhatsApp group, is there still?
You know, we do have a group thread going, but normally, like, Susan and I, like, always go on the side and talk about. She's always like, "Come over, let's read this play together." She's constantly keeping me in the literature, which I love and I need.
So my final question is, I know obviously Agnes is probably taking up a lot of your thoughts right now, but have you got much else kind of coming up, or any kind of, obviously, you know, you're with the production company now. Is there anything you've got kind of that you're working on that you're looking forward to getting started on?
Yes. Well, one thing is, you might hear a voice that sounds a lot like mine in the next season of the podcast Rabbits.
Cool.
So I'm excited for that to come out. And then Quagmire just fully financed their next movie. So we're going to start pre-production in August. And It's a really incredible story with Teresa Sutherland, who wrote The Wind, and this is her first time directing. So like you said, like bringing women like behind the camera and especially into that director's seat. I'm really excited to get started on that one.
Well, having seen Agnes, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys have got coming up next, because I thought this is I'm just looking forward to seeing all the reactions as well from the festival, because I think it's going to go down quite well, hopefully.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, same here. I'm like, God, I hope people keep having fun with it and telling me their theories, because that's really fun. It's fun to hear what people think.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Molly. It's been a real pleasure, and thanks for agreeing to move this a day later. And best of luck with the showing. I hope it all goes really well.
Thanks so much. This was really fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey,